Jai Shri Krishna. Jai Shri Krishna, Sat Shri Akal. We'll start as usual with a dhyana. Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavagaihi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. The highest goal of a human life is happiness and freedom from sorrow. Satsang and spirituality only teaches us to live life to the fullest. It opens up a new world of living full of enthusiasm and vigor. Goswami Tulsi ji said, Binu satsang vivek nahi, Rama kripa binu satsang nahi. But our parampara takes it further, and it says Guru bina gyan nahi. Jivanmuktas started in the year 1981 by Param Pujya Guruji Shantaram Bhandarkar Maharaj in Bahrain. Through the last 4 decades, it has spread its wings across the world. Pujya Guruji has championed learning variety of scriptures with the only objective of leading an enriched life, inspired by the knowledge. Param Pujya Guruji only talks the walk. His teachings are through his living. He has firmly advocated that without transpiring into living, the knowledge is incomplete. Suna mana, magar kiya to hi jana. A life with no expectations, no criticisms, no complaint is indeed a happy life. Param Pujya Guruji lived a life with the concept of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, spreading unconditional love and always inspired to greatness. In the series of stress-free life in the stressful times that we are undergoing, welcome to the glorious 3rd week, which we are all eagerly looking for and waiting for. Today's topic is, can spirituality and materialism coexist? Without further delay, let me call upon our speakers for this evening, Shankar Shrikanth ji and Devi Lakshmi Narayananji. Welcome to the show. Shrikanth ji has been a student of scriptures with Jivanmukta family for past 12 years under the guidance of Param Pujya Guruji. Guruji Sri Shantaram Bhandarkar Maharaj has conducted various talks and personal empowerment workshops across several forms, including education institutions in India and Indonesia. These talks remain rooted in the spiritual essence of the Indian scriptures, with an emphasis on practical applications of the scriptures for daily life. Shrikanth ji, a qualified chartered accountant, is currently resident in Singapore and works in the healthcare sector. Jai Shri Krishna, welcome Shrikanth ji to the show.
Jai Shri Krishna. Prostrations to all Devis and Mahatmas, prostrations to the lotus feet of Param Pujya Guruji. Blessed to be on the call today.
Thank you. We'll also introduce today a second speaker for the evening, Devi Lakshmi Narayananji. Lakshmi ji is a dynamic individual who lives to show that spirituality can be blended into day-to-day life. No two doubts about it. Lakshmi ji was a successful banking technology leader, having worked in Europe, USA, Southeast Asia, and India. Holds a double MBA from NUS, Singapore, and UCLA. Lakshmi ji has always been interested in performing arts, an avid dancer until she became mother of 2, with organically transferred into singing and appreciation of music. She is an avid traveler too, with a special passion for trekking. Lakshmi ji is now full-time dedicated to satsang and volunteering activities in it. She says, I am a spiritual mother, spiritual wife and a homemaker, and spiritual professional and spiritual social being. Welcome Lakshmi ji to the evening. Looking forward to both of you for today's show. Over to both the speakers. Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna. Very, very blessed to be here. The third of a series of talks. Today we will be talking about, can spirituality and materialism coexist? Right? And we will talk about if it can, how it can, and why it should. Right? So thank you for making the time and being here with us today. I will start with the story also. There was once a king, and this king had a very faithful minister. The minister had been with him for many, many years, and it was time for the king to pass on to the next generation and for the minister to retire. So one evening, when the decision is made, he calls the minister and he says, tomorrow morning at sunrise, I want you to come here and तुम्हारी जो जन्म की पूंजी है वो मैं तुमको देने वाला हूँ. Whatever you have for being my faithful servant for so many years, I will give you your reward. Minister is very happy. He knows he has done well. He knows he is going to get a lot. He turns up. At sunrise, this is what the king says. The king says, you know this land better than anybody else in my country does, right? You know everything that is there in it, everything that I have. From this point on, you can traverse this land as much as you want. And as far as you go, that land is yours. And whatever in it will belong to you. Minister तो बहुत खुश हो गया कि यार, लॉटरी लगने वाली है. And he says, okay, but he knows there is a condition. And lo and behold, the king says, this is a condition. At sunset, I need to see you back here in the kingdom, in my court. And whatever you've gathered is all yours, no conditions after that. Mantri says, what is the big deal in this? Right? He goes to the stables, finds the fastest horse, sits on the horse, starts riding in the direction he wants to. And at noon, he thinks he's done really well for himself. And at that point, he thinks, another 1 hour from here, I'm on a really fast horse. There is all these natural resources and precious metals. If I get that, then my next generation also will not have to worry. He says, okay, and he goes till there. Oh, he goes there. He says, little further away, there is gold. Who will want to miss a gold mine now? So he goes until the gold mine, and then he says, I'm tired. I've come this far. Little more further away, there are diamonds. Will anyone give up the diamonds? 3 generations taken care, maybe even more than that, right? And he goes. And then, by the time he turns his horse around, the horse is tired. He is tired. It is very close to sunset. And what happens? He does not come back to the king's court by sunset. So the king would have said, if you don't come back, you get nothing. Right? We all think, oh, what a fool he was, right? But in essence, that was the story of my life for sure, until I found the magic of spirituality. And I'm not going to tell you about that. I'm going to leave it to Shrikanth to tell you about that. But before that, let's look at this story in different dimensions, right? I said that was the story of my life. I was overworked. I was restless. I was sleepless. I was constantly tired. I was tired of running the rat race, but I still wanted to run the rat race, right? And then in a second dimension, the story goes this way, right? I come from a very orthodox family where girl or boy, it didn't matter. All that mattered was 80% mila ki nahi. 80% नहीं मिला तो और पढ़ाई करो. ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है कि 80% ना मिले, right? So I said, God, 8th grade, 9th grade, my friends are going to watch movies. My mother says, study, 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 study. ये 10th class हो जाए ना, कितना मस्ती करने वाली हूँ. 10th हो गया, 11th में मिला. Then my mother said, अच्छा college मिल जाए तो जिंदगी बन जाएगी तुम्हारी. I also said, oh, if I get a good graduation degree, then masti hi masti. I won't even have to ask my parents for money after that, because good college meant good job after that. So I said, okay, 12th class finish. I know everybody bunks in college and they go out to the best movies they want to watch. So finished college, finished 12th, went to college. College, the story was different. Everybody is saying, I want this job, I want this postgrad, I want this MBA. My head was spinning. I said, oh, let me do something about it. Otherwise, I am not going to get that fancy job. So I said, once I get a job, I'm going to be an adult also. Who is going to ask me? Then I got the job. Then mother is saying, shadi kar lo, shadi kar lo, shadi kar lo. Boss is saying, another 1 hour, another 2 hours. You finish this deadline, that deadline, not done. I said, wasn't I better before? Now it's a tug of war. I am being pulled in both directions. And then I said, oh, when I get married, right, it's going to be so much better. And I got married. And then, of course, bacha kab hoga, bacha hab hoga, bacha tab hoga. I said, oh my good God, does it ever end? And I thought, jab bacha ho jaye, right, then they will get off my back because they will have another back to get on to. Little did I realize that I am going to be the one that has to get on that back. Right? So then it is another 10th grade and another 12th grade. And what did I keep thinking? Right? There was this donkey. The donkey's dhobi was a very bad dhobi. He made him work very, very hard. And there were all these very good, friendly donkeys outside that kept coming to this very sad dhobi and saying, why don't you come with us? There is a really happy life out there. But this donkey did not want to go. Then one day, this donkey's best friend, the struggling donkey's best friend comes and says, I really want to understand. Why are you not coming with me? And then that donkey says, you know what? This dhobi has an 18-year-old daughter. Every time she doesn't behave, the dhobi says, मेरी बात नहीं मानोगे तो ये गधे से शादी करवाऊंगा. So that donkey is waiting there for sure. So I laugh when I hear the story every single time. But then I look at my life saying, at 10th I waited, at 12th I waited, at graduation I waited. We keep waiting for that happiness. I kept waiting for that happiness. Right? Does it really have to be so? And then now there's a third scenario. Before we will ask Shrikanth, is there a better way to live? Right? But there's another funny story. One day, the husband has gone to work. Thaka hara aata hai ghar ke andar. As soon as he comes in, the wife says, tum bhi na. And the husband knows when the evening starts like that, what is going to follow? Mahabharat. But it's not only the wives, you see. Husband's best friend has come back from the USA. He has settled down in the neighborhood. And one day there is a grand party. All good friends are there. And they have a really good time, or so the wife thinks, and they are coming back home. As soon as they come in, the husband says, Bhabhi ka matar paneer. You have to learn from her, you know. Tum bhi na. Right? So what is the essence? The essence is, uska kameez meri kameez se safed kaise? Right? We keep comparing. We have unrealistic expectations, and then we keep complaining. And that moment of happiness, we forget that it is there with us. I am happy that I got a 10% raise until I find out that, oh, he got a 15% raise. Bhala uski kameez meri kameez se safed kaise? Right? But Shrikanth, now the question is for you. Is this the reality? Is there a better way to live than this?
Jai Shri Krishna. So actually there is a solution to, and there is a solution to construct out of all this that we go through. And, this is actually contained in a best-selling book that has sold, millions of copies all over. And it's literally like when you go to a port in a ferry terminal and you see a ferry which is coming in. And when the ferry is coming in, you will see a small, tiny little tugboat that is pulling tons of steel and anchoring it safely into the harbor. And what is the solution? The solution is in this best-selling book that has sold millions of copies all over the world. And it's literally like that operating manual when you go to buy an iPhone at an Apple store. You get a instruction booklet which you use to actually start up your phone, and that is actually available in multiple languages also. This best-selling book has sold millions of copies all over. The narrator of this book is probably the best life coach that anyone has seen in the past, the best life coach that anybody is going to see now, and the best life coach that is ever going to be there in the future. Right? And what are we talking about? It is actually the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. 700 verses, a manual that many people swear on. Right? They're able to go to that manual and consult it for any issue they had. And many of them have said that their lives have transformed because of walking this path which is contained in the scriptures. And their life is completely transformed. So the question, this is literally becomes like that user manual for us, a reference tool that is available. Mahatma Gandhi used to call this his mother. Whenever he had a problem, he would go back and actually consult this book, and he had a solution that came in. But Lakshmi ji, I have a question. While this is all stated and people have lived that path, we actually live in what they say in the corporate world now is a VUCA world, right? It is volatile, it is uncertain, it is complex, and it is ambiguous. Right? Is there really a way that we can take this adhyatma from the scriptures and make it the basis for doing our vyavahar in the world?
Thank you, Shrikanth. It is a very beautiful question, right? And some people might even think, "Kitna behuda sa sawal hai." You go and tell a teenager who's dressed up to go to Hard Rock Cafe and tell him, Sanjay Subramanian is singing. Please, do you want to go with me? So then he will say, "What? Really?" So some people might even think this question is like that. But thankfully, for those who are connected here, they don't think that, right? And lucky for us, at some point, we made the transfer from thinking that to saying, oh, maybe we should ask this question. Maybe we should listen to what that answer could be. And there can be a connect between spirituality and my material world as I see it, right? Because in my material world today, even today, there are desires, there are expectations, there are goals. So then how do I match? How do I make that connect between materialism and spirituality, right? There's this funny story which I've heard in the satsang, which I want to share. There was this woman, she was novorish, coming to new money. And she made a lot of good friends in the high-flying society. And one of them became a really good friend who cared about her, who wanted her to do well. And she said, new party coming up, you have really good clothes. You need to get yourself Jimmy Choo shoes, right? And I hadn't heard what that was till I came to the satsang, very sorry to say. But now I know, right? So in Bombay, they go to Atria Mall, really high-flying mall, and there's this showroom. They buy. It's about 2 lakh rupees for the pair that she bought. And she's very happy that she's come into this new life, and now everyone is going to look at her shoes. She goes home, and the next day is a party. She gets dressed, and she turns up at the party. One small problem. She's carrying those shoes on her head. भाई 2 लाख रुपया दिया है जूते के लिए, पैर पे पहन के थोड़ी आऊंगी, right? And nobody is saying anything to her. She has her Kolhapuri chappal on her feet, in their place. They're all laughing, hush, hush, laughing. Then this really good friend who took her to the store comes back and says, "My dear, what are you doing?" And she says, 2 lakh rupees diye hai, पैर पे थोड़ी पहनूंगी. I am showing off my shoes to everybody, right? I have a hearty laugh every time I listen to that story. But in many ways, isn't that what I do again? When when I want to keep my house tidy, I say everything has a place, everything has to be in its place. So I'm organized, I'm clean, I get things when I want, and everything works like magic, right? I need to apply the same principle in my life too. When there are those situations that I really enjoy, when there are those people I feel, oh, I'm so attached and so loved by them, I can't live without them. When there are those things that I feel, yaar, iska kuch ho jayega, to what will happen to me? You know, mera wala pen, right? Little things like that. I need to just ensure that all those things have a place value in my life, and I keep them at those place value. When that happens, when I give Vastu, Paristhiti and Vyakti their designated place in life, then I learned to work in a manner where I'm already happy. And then we have to understand this very clearly, right? We still need goals. It's okay to have expectations and desires. Nobody is saying you come to Satsanga, you read the Bhagavad Gita, give up everything. Not at all. Right? Where did Krishna teach Arjuna? In the battlefield, and told him, go fight your war, man. Right? So we need to do what we need to do. We need to have goals. And then I need to have a plan on how to achieve those goals. Then I need to work that plan, work hard, work smart. Right? If I go to the train station and I want to get on a train that goes to Delhi, I need to tell the ticket collector, I want to go to Delhi. If I don't do that, then if I tell him I don't know where I want to go, then the ticket collector will either send me to the police station thinking I'm lost, or even send me to the mental hospital thinking I've lost my top rank. Right? So I need to know where I want to go, and then I need to work that plan, work hard and work smart. Then I'm working out of a place saying, I have planned, I am not worrying. And there is a big difference between the two. When I plan, I set aside a time to say, this is where I want to reach, this is what I'm going to do. And every now and then, at a designated time, I go revisit that plan, I see how I have progressed, I see whether I need to change right, change left, make those changes, and then keep going again. Worrying might not seem very different. The big difference is, worrying does not have a designated time. It will creep into my head when I'm trying to sleep at night and not allow me to sleep. It will creep in when I'm actually sitting and doing that work and give me a lot of stress and anxiety to say, yaar, ye goal milega ki nahi milega? That is the big difference between planning and worrying. Worrying will give me sweat, it will give me a high blood pressure, it will even give me diabetes. But planning actually makes me more productive. The bigger the goal, the better my plans will become. Right? And it does not mean that if I follow this, everything has a place, everything in its place, I plan, I work, life is going to be smooth, the road is going to be smooth. It does not mean that. Right? Sorry. It does not mean that at all. There will be potholes, there will be hurdles, there will be an unexpected dead end. Sometimes the road will swerve right without knowing. But knowing where I am in line with the scriptures will tell me how to handle those ups and downs. Like Roger Federer's great injury in 2016, where the media was talking about, is this it for him? He had surgery. He himself was not sure what is going to happen. He got up, he trained again, and 2018, he was on top of the ATP list again. And perhaps the oldest person to be there until now also. Right? What did he do? He used that very same hurdle to say, I am going to do things differently. I'm going to have new goals so that I not only get up and move on, but also exceed expectations that I have set for myself. So, embracing these failures is what I will learn when I walk on the path. So, my question now to Shrikanth ji is, how do we deal with these so-called problems, what I perceive in my head as a problem? How do I motivate myself? how do I stop myself from getting stressed and anxious and being my own hurdle on my progress, both spiritually and materially?
Thank you, Lakshmi. And so there was a Hindi movie sometime back called, the movie was Three Idiots, right? And in that there is a dialogue between Amir Khan and Boman Irani where he says, "Forget success, chase excellence." And we'll take an example of somebody who's in the news recently for the Ram Janmabhoomi case, which he argued in the Supreme Court and which led to such a beautiful conclusion. So Parasharanji, who is the former Attorney General of India, started his legal career in the mid-50s. And when he studied law, qualified, and came out, he had a lot of challenges at work. And what he started to do at that point of time, and he was a person who grew up in the vicinity of the Parthasarathi temple at Chennai in Triplicate. Every day, the story goes that every day when he used to go to the school, he would actually pray to the Gopuram when he used to go and come back from the school right from the young age. So when at the time he started his practicing his law, he was not, still had not picked up in terms of practice. And one of the days he actually attends a Ramayana discourse going on at the Parthasarathi temple in Chennai. And after that, and this happened in the mid-50s, he started to read the Ramayana every day. What happened as a result of that was essentially that his entire career started to transform. And that path of excellence started to unfold for him. So what would he goes on to, register at the Supreme Court, becomes a Solicitor General, and he is arguing cases for the government. At one point of time, the government led by Indira Gandhi had come back with a thumping majority, and he is supposed to present and argue for the government a case in the court. And when the matter comes up for hearing, he realizes the position of the government is wrong. And he actually withdraws and he goes to the government, to the law minister, and says, "I'm not going to argue this case. I give it back to you." Right? And he remembers what his father told him at that time, that don't sell, your heritage for a mass of pottage. And this is exactly what the scriptures tell us to do. It is constantly to reflect back on what is our duty at a given moment. The other part, which is so beautifully comes out in this example, is also how when you start to include the Lord in everything, the magic starts to unfold. So Parasharanji's home is in Chennai. The person works out of Delhi. Every day, every time he returns to Chennai on a flight, the car doesn't go home straight. The car goes first to the Parthasarathi temple. If the temple is shut and he has landed at 1 o'clock, the car will make 3 pradakshinas of the temple and then he would enter his home. Right? All that Param Puja Guruji tells us about including the Lord in everything that we do is so beautifully borne out by this example. So he's actually asked once, and he's known as the Pitamaha of the Indian legal bar. Right? And he's asked by, when he was addressing the Young Lawyers Association, how do you excel and make a career of excellence in the legal practice? And he gives a beautiful formula that goes back to the scriptures again. The first thing he says, when you qualify in law, you can't go out and say, I'm going to argue straight in the Supreme Court. You need to go and work for a senior, right? And work for a senior who would teach you the tricks of the trade. The second thing that he says is what Robin Sharma tells us now, and it's an age-old, context, again, back to the scriptures, of creating this world-class environment around you and surrounding yourself with people who are even better than you. Right? The third factor that he also says is how much of time you put in for application and reflecting on your true journey. Right? And the fourth thing that Malcolm Gladwell tells us of 10,000 hours of practice being required for excellence in every field. Again, a message from the scriptures. The other lesson from Parasharanji's example is the humility of the gentleman. Right? At the age of 90, when he is arguing the Ram Janmabhoomi case in court, the judge out of deference to his age, tells him, "Sir, why don't you please sit down, and you can present your arguments while sitting down." And what does he tell the judge? He tells him, "All this while, for anybody, I've always been standing. This is Lord Rama for whom I am presenting this case. How can I even sit?" Right? And that clearly shows us, and you see the career path of this gentleman, even at 90, so alert. It clearly shows us that when you make the scripture the basis of everything you do, the magic automatically starts to happen.
That's very beautiful, Shrikanth. Very, very amazing example. So I would urge you to share some more real life examples of people who walk the talk, people who read the scriptures, and people who believed that the walking on the path, being on the spiritual path, had something to do with the heights that they reached in the material world. Please.
Thank you, Lakshmi. And so we can take another example in the current day world, and this is a person who's called the Metro Man in India, E. Sridharan, right? And this gentleman started his career in the railways very early on, and if you look at, and just before going to what he would do in the textile industry, there is always this concept of how a cloth is woven, right? And you have yarn, which goes, the warp yarn, which is put on a frame, and then you put the weft through it, and the weft goes up and down over the warp completely. And this is what E. Sridharan did. Right? He started off his career in the railways very early on in his tenure as an engineer when he was in Southern Railways. A century-old bridge called the Pamban Bridge actually collapsed. And everybody thought this is an impossible feat to actually reconstruct it. And with the effect that it was that one island was completely cut off from the rest of India. So what does E. Sridharan do? He's called in and he's told, you have to get this up and running. And he's given 4.5 months to complete the project. Right? Goes on site. And he knows in 4.5 months, even to get all the girders ready is next to impossible. The man goes down to the site, starts to take trips, on the sea, and is talking to fishermen, etc., and figures out what needs to be done. And this entire project gets completed instead of 4.5 months in 42 days. Right? Again, what the scripture tells us, right, and what Param Pujya Guruji always tells us, we need to be ever alert and the ability to listen to others around us. So much so, when it was done in 42 days, the people did not even know about it in Parliament, and they said it is going to take another 3 weeks more. And they had already flagged off trains on the bridge that was reconstructed. The man shows us what excellence, and he would always say, what is your message in terms of performance is your only spokesman, right? And this clearly comes out when you pursue that story of excellence. He was told, this man was transferred 25 or 26 times in his career in the railways through different parts of the country because he would not listen to what politicians would tell him to do. So he's actually asked, do you bear any kind of ill will to and malice towards the people who shunted you from one city to another? And he says, absolutely not. Why? He would go back and quote the verse of the Gita, which tells us that not to bear malice to anybody. A man who would get up and get up at 4:30 in the morning and read the Bhagavad Gita every day, and he's asked, why do you do it? He would say, this is my manual for daily life. So much so, he would actually, what Param Pujya Guruji would tell us, there is nobody who is dearer to the Lord than a devotee who spreads the message of the Lord. Right? A Gita copy would be in the hand of every railway employee that he was interacting with. Right? All these examples go to clearly show, and there's one part where he went on to do the Calcutta Metro. You leave institutions that are used by generations of people later. Right? The Delhi Metro was set up by him. The Konkan Railway, which was supposed to be impossible to cut and put railway tracks through mountainous terrain like that. The man did 800 kilometers of railway, which was put through in that kind of terrain. Again, it goes back to, and the person even now continues to read the Gita every day and continues to spread the message of the Lord through his busy schedule by going out in the evening and actually speaking on the Gita and the Bhagavatam in temples. A very, very powerful and very inspiring example for all of us.
Wow, absolutely amazing, Shrikanth. I have another question now, and this was my perception before I joined the Gita sessions first, and then other scriptures that we take up at our satsang. It is believed that to learn the scriptures, to even become, comfortable or well-read in the scriptures, one has to learn for an extended, long period in time, in a very, very structured manner, like we go to ICSE school or any of the IB, CBSE schools. We need a mentor or a guru. Is this true? Is there a role for a master, a guru in the spiritual path? And do you have an example in the material world of someone who did well because they had a master?
Wonderful question, Lakshmi. And would look at the medical, in the healthcare sector, and there's a doctor called Dr. Atul Gawande who has actually written books which were on top of the New York Times, book lists. He has written a book called the Checklist Manifesto, and he's written several books before that. And Atul Gawande actually, had a very successful medical career. He had done 20 years of surgery. And he starts to think that he's just about, maintaining his performance, right? And then what does he do? He actually goes and looks at the basketball and professional soccer teams in the US. And, they all have coaches. They all have coaches who would drive. And, he saw how performance was being driven there. Then he goes and he actually interviews the director of the New York Philharmonic Orchestra. And he asks this conductor, how do you kind of improve your performance? He says, I take my wife to every concert that I do. Right? So he says, why do you take your wife to every concert? And he says, she's my best critic. So he says, if all these people are able to get guides into their path of excellence, he says, why doesn't it not happen in the field of medicine? So he says, let me call my old professor who had retired. And he says, I'll call him into a surgery and let me see what happens and let me see what he comes up with. So he calls this old professor in and, he does his surgery. The surgery goes perfect as per plan, no extra time spent, all done. And he thinks he's done an absolutely great job. And he's coming out of the theater and the professor hands him 8 pages of notes and says, these are minor things that you need to take care of. So he's actually shocked and he says, after 25 years of surgery, how come there is so many points that are taken? So he actually goes back. Initially, he's a little rattled by what the professor has told him. And he goes and actually looks at what the professor has cited. Right? Every single point that the teacher has put in there, absolutely valid. Right? How he has operated with the lights in a completely different part, right? And his posture during surgery, with the effect that he was operating based on reflection of light, and especially in a country like America where legal risks for surgeons can be so high. Perfectly valid points. And this is what comes out, right? The need for us to constantly be under the guidance of a master. And Param Puja Guruji, shows us this not just in the path of spirituality, but how to live this life of excellence on a daily basis. So the same Atul Gawande, and wrote an article in the New York Times about how broken the American healthcare system is, and it is truly broken. If you look at it, if you are without insurance and you go to the US for a blood test, you might end up spending $3,000 for a simple blood test that has to be done. So he writes this article in the paper and says how this system needs to be fixed. And President Obama actually picks this up and says, this is why Obamacare was actually launched. So Warren Buffett's partner actually sends him a check after reading that article and sends him a check of $10,000. So Atul Gawande actually returns the check to him. What Charlie Munger, who's the partner, thought maybe the man got upset that I gave him only 10,000. So he sends him a second check of $20,000. So gives it to Atul Gawande, and Atul Gawande actually puts the check into the charity at the hospital in Harvard where he operates. And again, this message of the scripture of postponing temporary short-term gains for long-term benefit. He's called up 4 years later by the same group of intellectuals to actually head up a healthcare system that is now unfolding in the US, which is supposed to look at delivering healthcare services at much lower value, right, and much lower cost. Powerful reminder of how all of us, as Guruji says, we have these, infinite potential which is there within us, right? And how we use these skills. And if you look at this example of, be it of E. Sridharan, be it of Parashuranji, be it of Atul Gawande, how they rewired these skills to again look at how we can influence others on the journey. Right? So Atul Gawande actually wrote this book, Checklist Manifesto, and that book actually talks of a part where they are involved in a foundation in Uttar Pradesh, where you may not have the best medical equipment in the world. You may have had very high rates of female mortality during delivery, right, of mothers, maternal deaths, but with simple use of procedures, how you can dramatically bring that rates down. And this is what the Gita teaches us, that all of us have these skills which are there. It's about how we are able to turn it around and include others along. E. Sridharan would build a metro system that was affordable for the common man. Parashuranji would take up cases in the court when he felt that justice was not done to a particular section of society. Right? Very, very powerful reminders for us as to how we are able to use this under the guidance of a master and excel in our lives. Back to you, Lakshmi.
Thank you so much, Shrikanth. I think very, very powerful examples of popular names, names that will ring a bell, who followed the principles, who read the scriptures and made it to where they are today. So I'm going to summarize and then wrap up in the next few minutes. So we started off by saying that our current state, when we have not read this user manual, which is 18 chapters, 700 verses, Bhagavad Gita, is I don't know how to use the most complex machine in the world, which is this body and this mind. So then it is stress and fatigue and burnout. And I keep postponing happiness, and I keep pegging my happiness to something happening somewhere in the future. And I keep messing with the happiness that I already have with comparisons, unrealistic expectations, and complaints because of the same. And Shrikanth told us that there is a better way to live, and that better way is to read this user manual, the Bhagavad Gita, or any scripture with the purpose of transformation and not just with the purpose of information. Information to Google karenge to mil hi jayega. So suna, mana, kiya to hi jana, which is a very, very popularly used phrase in our sessions. I use the scriptures to understand that everything has a place, everything in its place. Then I live a happy life, and then I have big, hairy, audacious goals because I know how to plan my work, I know how to focus on my work, and I know how to live without stress and anxiety and lifestyle-related health issues. I make this a pursuit of excellence and not only a pursuit for success. And if I pursue excellence, then the success will follow. By living a life where materialism and spirituality are interwoven into each other. Like Shrikanth said, the warmth and weft of life. They both cannot be parallel tracks. As long as I continue to think they are parallel tracks, they will be. And I will not be able to integrate them. But when I say I want to transform and not just inform myself, then I will make every effort to make it that warp and weft, like Shrikanth mentioned. And the role of a master, right? If Atul Gawande had not called his professor, God knows what would have happened, right? But he did, and the result we have. So there is a role for a spiritual master. There is a great role for a master in any walk of life. I just need to open my mind up to say, I want to approach a master like that. So in closing, there is one thought that I would like to leave with, and I would like to leave everybody with, and it is this, right? Last week in the session Live and Laugh, they said learn to live sincerely and not seriously, right? And I think that makes a great segue into what we discussed and what we are hearing today. I need to learn to live sincerely and not seriously, because everything, including myself, including this, I take great pride, right, in this body, mind, and intellect. Everything has an expiry date. We are all time stamped. Thank God. God did not tell me what my time stamp and expiry date is, right? But we are all going to perish someday. So there are two very little stories which I really like, so I'm going to share. One is that of this Sardarji, right? Or this man. He's a great cook, really, really good at what he does. But as with any kind of success over a period in time, he becomes very proud. And in that pride, this very, very good man starts behaving in a nasty manner with his team because he thinks, no one better than me. And the master will only eat the food that I have cooked. So this team one day goes to the master and says, boss, really troubling us. Can you please do something? Master says, no worries. Tomorrow call him. And he comes. And he's very happy. He thought he thinks he's going to be rewarded by the master. Master says, I'm very happy with the work that you're doing. I'm going to give you a very responsible job. And this is it. He takes out a pin from the turban that he's wearing and he gives it to this chef. And he says, I want you to keep it safely. Pin, it's a small pin. In my next life, when I meet you, I want you to give it back to me. This chef is very happy. He says, I have been the one that has been picked to keep this safe. I am going to give this to the master in my next life. He's dancing on the roads. He's making a big noise. He goes home. The wife starts laughing the moment he says it to her. He gets annoyed. And then he says, why are you laughing? Everybody thought it is a great thing. She says, Buddhu, itna bhi samajh mein nahi aaya. Not only all your great skill that you feel very proud about, even this little pin you cannot take into your next life. What are you feeling so proud about? Right? And another connected story is this. Alexander the Great, known to have conquered the largest territory at his time, is lying on his deathbed. He's going to die, he knows. He looks right at his generals and he says, half my kingdom for one breath more. They look down, they have nothing to say, no words. He says, okay. He looks left and he says, all my kingdom for one breath more, no words. They love the king, but no words. Alexander the Great says, alas, I have wasted my life. And he says, on my death march, put my hands outside the coffin. Let the world know. What does he want the world to know? मुट्ठी बांध के आया है रे, हाथ पछाड़े जाएगा. चढ़ता सूरज धीरे धीरे ढलता है, ढल जाएगा. राजा रंक पुजारी पंडित सबको एक दिन जाना है. मुट्ठी बांध के आया है रे, हाथ पछाड़े जाएगा. जय श्री कृष्णा. Over to you, Vijayaji.
Thank you very much, Lakshmi ji. Amazing session. Awesome, awesome, outstanding. Charan Sparsh to you both, Shrikanth and Lakshmi ji. Over to Ravi ji for questions which are being sent to him.
Yeah, a few questions are flowing through. And after having heard the last story of Pin and Alexander, I think I'm going to pick randomly those questions which have come. And this question is, if it is so true that we can't even take a pin and we came with our hands closed and empty hands, then why let me just see what they have texted here. Why our minds propel us to overemphasize the need for material prosperity and acquisition over spiritual values? Maybe Lakshmi ji, we can start with you on this.
Jai Shri Krishna, Ravi ji. Very, very good question. It's a question that I asked myself before I joined the satsang, right? I said, I am happy. And there are good days, there are bad days, you know, thoda khatta, thoda meetha, yahi to zindagi hai. But when one knows that there is a better way to live, right? When I know that I can have a quiet AC in the background and not feel the heat, and yet have a comfortable experience of speaking without a background noise, will I not use it? In the same way, when I know that there is a far optimal software available that I can integrate into my hardware, which will make life smoother, happier, securer, calmer, more peaceful, why will I not want to use it? So the reason for the focus left is because I don't know there is a right. The moment I taste the right, I will not want to go left. But like Srini Maharaj says, gunge ki mithai, jab chako, tabhi pata chalega.
Thank you for that wonderful connect of Gunge Ki Mithai. Shrikanth, I have a question here. One of the Mahatma has straightly wanted it to be addressed by you. The question is on the screen. How to identify that my skill is for the greater good? Most of the time, we just ignore it or just feel it is too short to meet the greater good, or just thinking is just an illusion.
Jai Shri Krishna, pranams. Thank you so much, Ajayji. Beautiful question, right? It comes back to, and as it's the reminder that Param Puja Guruji gives all of us, right? It doesn't matter what skills and potential that we have. It's about how we are able to turn it and start to include others in the journey with us. So I'll give an example of a lady who lost her young child for lack of blood, right? And she could have very well at that point of time said, you know, this is, my world has come to a complete end and at this stage, and could have remained in that misery forever. But what does she do? She resolves. She doesn't have any background, you know, in terms of a pharmaceutical career or a medical background. He says, from now onwards, I'm going to make sure that no child dies for want of blood. And she actually establishes a blood bank in Mumbai, which still exists outside the KEM hospital. One of the largest private sector blood banks in India, still exists today. Right? So it's a powerful reminder for us again. It's, as Guruji always says, we all have that potential, right? It's about how we are able to transform that potential. And when we start to use it, we start to see the magnitude of change that we are able to bring in, not only in us, but in others as we go along the journey. Back to you, Ravi.
Thank you, Shrikanth. But your please stay on. I think there is one very interesting question which has come, and if I'm reading it correctly, does spirituality inhibit worldly existence?
Lovely question, right? And actually, what spirituality gives us, just as how we give that example of the tugboat that comes in. What it does is it is able to put a completely different dimension to how we live and do our duty in the world. When we make, and as Lakshmi ji said, when you make that the backbone of everything that you do, right? When you are able to clearly anchor it on this foundation of the scriptures, right? life gets completely transformed. So that's where it gives you that, as they say, when you put a catalyst in a chemical plant, with the reaction, the product comes out completely different. The same way, when you're able to add, that tirtham of the Lord into everything that we do, your entire life becomes completely divine.
Oh, that was awesome. Shrikanth, one more interesting question which has come, and this is again, I'm asking you if you can address it. It looks like the world is moving away from spirituality towards materialism. Can this trend be reversed?
Oh, absolutely, right? No doubts about it. It will definitely happen, and you see this happening every day, right? So, what is currently what we read, what we hear in the media, for every negative news that is portrayed, there are 10 positive instances that are going on which are not covered at all. Right? So, as Guruji says, if we start to look at what the positives are in this world, clearly you start to see this happening. Right? You take the current situation of COVID itself, the number of people who have been working at the front lines of healthcare, selflessly sacrificing not just their knowledge and skills, but the ability to put solutions in the hands of people. A young student in America, 14 years of age, realizes that a hospital next to his house is having a shortage of masks. He takes the 3D printer from his house, starts to print masks, go to the hospital, discusses, and puts it. Never reported in the media. Right? That's where the transformation is happening, and that's is clearly the world will anchor on the basis of this foundation that is given to us, and this beautiful foundation that is given to us.
Thank you, Shrikanth, for bringing in those unsung heroes, which truly shows that there is much more than materialism and materialistic pursuits. There's one question.
Ravichi, I have a
please
question.
Go ahead.
Okay,
There's
carry
one
on.
question.
Yeah, there is one question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so it says that for should we have to have two different personalities to have material life and spiritual life? Can this gap will ever be bridged? That's what it says.
Lakshmi ji, over to you for that.
Again, very oft asked question and a very good question, right? There's a phrase we use in our satsang, andar Rama, bahar drama. Right? That's what we need to learn to do. Where when I go to work, when I have staff in my house that doesn't listen to me, I do all the drama that is needed. I shout if I have to, I put my foot down, I get my money's worth wherever I need to, right? But at the same time, inside I'm very loving. Inside, if she is sick, I tell her don't come to work today. Inside, after having that difficult discussion with my boss saying boss bonus nahi mila, I'm able to call home and say mast drama kiya boss ke saath aaj, right? That laugh inside is only possible when I know that I'm doing this work because I want to be successful in the world. At the same time, I want to grow spiritually. That which I learn from the scriptures, I use the world as a laboratory to practice, right? Then it is possible to laugh inside and do all the drama that is needed outside. Over to you.
Awesome, Lakshmi ji, for giving that what do you call a secret balancing formula. Thank you very, very much. Over to you, Ravi ji.
I think we have just a few last 9 seconds, and if I can ask one question to Lakshmi ji and then to Shrikanth ji, what lifestyle changes should be done to maintain the balance between the two? You talked about Andar Rama Bahar drama, but what lifestyle changes is required to maintain this balance?
I can tell you what has worked for us, and then Shrikanth ji can share as well. It is simplify, 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 right? Just like in school, when we have those very big fraction numbers, we bring it down to the least possible, simplest form, right? And then it becomes easy to do math. In the same way, I have my worldly desires, I continue to have even today. But if I keep on asking why, right? Like Simon Sinek says, ask why 3 times, ask why 5 times. If I still have an answer, I go ahead and do it. Right? In the same way, I simplify everything. Then I will really see, when I'm alert to what I'm doing in the simplification process, I see many things I do everybody is doing, so I also do. Right? When that falls off, my life actually becomes very easy going. Over to you, Shrikanth, for your views.
Absolutely true, right? So what it comes back to again is, to get that balance in the world as you do your duty. There is no other way than anchoring yourself on this foundation, right? And the beauty of this is that there are so many people around you who, and that is the power of satsanga, which shows us when you look at and you are inspired by examples that you see on a daily basis, right? And you're able to start to take what they are doing in terms of their life, you're able to start to transform and change, because the biggest beneficiary in this is us as an individual, right? So the more and more we are, as Lakshmi ji said, remaining alert, making sure that we travel absolutely light, like the Indian Railways say, and then automatically one starts to enjoy the journey.
Shrikanth ji, please stay on. I will ask the last question, and then I would like to welcome on show Papni Thakurji, who has made all these sessions possible. It was his call which came our way. And the last question is, if one is on spiritual path, does it mean he should give up his work life, family, and also wealth? This is a very profound question which we all in day-to-day lives come across. And if you can just address this, then we will welcome Papni ji onto the show.
Beautiful question, right? And we go back to the Gita in the 11th chapter. The Lord actually tells Arjuna this. He says, you conquer, conquer your enemies, win all your glories and fame. But he gives a very beautiful formula there where he says, you do this as an instrument of me, right? He says, nimitta matram. The more and more we are able to practice that, where we realize that we are just that divine being on this human journey, then clearly that starts to unfold. Back to you, Ravi.
Thank you for that, Gita Connect at chapter 11. Papni ji, please welcome a few words from your end. You have been so kind to us.
Namaste, Jai Shri Krishna.
Please go ahead.
It has been a wonderful, wonderful session. So many take-home points. I loved, most of our life is actually based on generalization. But the key is to lead an extraordinary life that lies in simplicity. That's what it comes out from you, Shrikanth. Amazing to know that. And the life. I think
we lost Papni ji.
Yes, so that's a reason. Yeah. So we'll have to give some time to him. And I love this checklist manifesto. I would definitely love to read that and pursue that excellence life, what I had been suggested in that. Yes, here we go. Papani is back.
Sorry, technical reason. बहुत अच्छा लगा आप सब लोगों से मिलके। यहाँ पर ज्ञान की गंगा बह रही है। जब भी बात करते हैं, अभी हमारा जो 3rd सेशन खत्म हुआ, जब भी सुनते रहते हैं और हर टाइम नया एक एंगल मिलता है हमें अपने जीवन में उतारने के लिए। तो इसमें से मैं सिर्फ यही निकाला कि हम प्रैक्टिस करते रहें। बस सबसे मैं निवेदन करूंगा आप इनसे जुड़े रहें। हमारे 2-4 और भी सेशन होंगे, अगर डिमांड होगी तो और फर्दर करेंगे। थैंक यू जय जी, थैंक यू रविकांत जी, थैंक यू लक्ष्मी जी एंड श्रीकांत जी।
Thank you, Papni ji, for giving us this wonderful opportunity.
आपके आभार and धन्यवाद Papni ji for helping us out. Amazing cooperation from your side.
जी, थैंक यू।
Thank you. Vijay ji would like to do the closing.
Yes. Thank you very much for the great opportunity that God has blessed us. And thanks with gratitude to Shrikanth ji and Mata Lakshmi ji for amazing session with a lot of practical points and basically leaving us with a lot of contemplation. Is it really so difficult to lead a simple life? It isn't. It's all in the way that we think to get that blend. And we have a finest examples in them because they are leading that life currently. So we will end today's session with these thoughts. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnascha Purnamadhaya Purnameva Avasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gratitude to Guruji, gratitude to all Mahatmas and Devis, gratitude to all the audiences, gratitude to each one of you who have joined us a session. Jai Shri Krishna, Shubhratri. Dhanyawad.
Pranams and look forward to next Tuesday's session. Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna. Grateful to everyone.